At the party, Maya's friends had me cornered. "We hear you've been in love with Maya since you were kids," one of them said, leaning in with a knowing smile. "That you always insisted on being the husband when you played house. This story is a work of fiction. All characters, events, and situations presented are invented and do not represent real people. So, what's up? Are you still in love with her?" All eyes in the circle turned to me, but my gaze drifted to the corner of the room, to the woman quietly pouring herself another drink. "That was a long time ago," I said, forcing a casual smile. "I was just a kid. I probably caused her more trouble than anything." I looked down, fiddling with the ring on my finger. "The truth is, I got over it years ago. Besides, I'm getting married soon." In the sudden silence, the sharp crunch of a breaking glass echoed through the room. Maya looked at her ruined heels, the wine soaking the delicate suede. The corners of her eyes were reddened, and for a long moment she looked completely lost. I could have married Maya 6 years ago. What she never knew was that every time our story approached a decisive turn, it was because I silently intervened, because I realized something unsettling. This world seemed like a story written by someone else, a tragedy disguised as romance. Maya was the heroine, my older brother Eric was the protagonist, and I was just the secondary character determined to change the script. Our families were neighbors, practically inseparable. Maya was the same age as Eric, 3 years older than me. You could say we were childhood sweethearts or something similar. She always took care of me, a little more than necessary. I thought that meant she liked me. From the moment I was born, she was there. In every, scraped knee, every victory, every awkward silence, she was a constant presence for 22 years of my life. Loving her felt as natural as breathing. I don't even know when it started. I remember playing house in the backyard. Maya wanted to be the mom, Eric the dad, and I was their baby. I threw a tantrum, crashing my toy truck against the patio stones. "I'm not the baby. I'm the dad. I'm going to be the one to put the veil on Maya, the one who marries her." Eric just laughed and pushed me toward her. It's fine. Marry her. Go on." And Maya didn't say no. She laughed, called me honey, and placed one of Grandma's red dishcloths on her head like a veil. I was 5 years old, but when she put on that makeshift veil, a dream began that would last 17 years. That dream ended in my junior year of college, on Valentine's Day. I was out with my roommate when I saw them, Eric and Maya, walking together under the winter sky. She tenderly plucked a leaf from his hair. It was such an intimate, natural gesture that I felt the world shut down around me. Then she gave him a small box of ribbon-wrapped chocolates. My roommate nudged me. "She's giving chocolates to Eric?" "She didn't." "No, you're crazy about her?" That day, my world collapsed. It only takes an instant for something to change forever. Disappointment took root inside me, disguised as silence. I couldn't easily accept that Maya, the person on whom I had deposited years of silent emotions, was in love with someone else, and worse, with Eric. I started to distance myself. I became colder, more introspective. For my graduation party, I decided to invite only her. I wanted to say goodbye, or perhaps tell her what I had never been able to. That night, Maya drank a little too much and agreed to accompany me to my apartment to rest before going home. We sat on the sofa. She talked nonstop, laughing as if nothing had changed, and I didn't know if I had the right to be there so close to her. At one point, she rested her head on my shoulder, closed her eyes, and I felt my entire body trembling. I wanted to kiss her. I wanted time to go back, but then I imagined her waking up, confused. I imagined her regretful, distant. I saw a chain of mistakes, arguments, and broken lives in my mind, and something inside me broke. I got up from the sofa, walked to the window. It was snowing. She murmured my name, half asleep. "Why are you crying?" she whispered in a sleepy voice. I didn't answer. I simply took a blanket and covered her shoulders. I sat on the floor beside her without touching her, and I spent the night there. The next morning, Eric and Sophia arrived to pick her up. They found me making her coffee. She had fallen asleep. Eric looked at me suspiciously. Sophia looked uncomfortable. The tension was palpable. What happened here? Eric asked, crossing his arms. Nothing. She just came to rest a bit, I replied, keeping my calm. You can take her if you want, no problem. Sophia gave me a long look. Anything weird and we'll know, she said softly. I just nodded. From then on, I pulled away. I didn't insist again. I said goodbye without a fuss. I wrote to her one last time. Don't worry. I will never force you to love me again. After that, I left for New York. I got an internship, and then a low-paying but stable job. I lived on the minimum, trying to rebuild myself. I promised not to look back. I thought I would never see her again, but fate had other plans. One day, the arrival of the new chief operating officer was announced. Her name, Maya Sterling. I saw her cross the office like a ray of sun, icy, impeccable, serene, unreachable. Por sorte no me vio. A colleague came over, joking. Wow, it was about time we had a boss like that. Not your type. I just nodded. Yes, my type. My boss patted me on the back. Don't even think about it. They say some weird guy once tried to mess with her personal life. She hasn't tolerated inappropriate behavior since. My heart stopped. My past, still like a shadow, followed me. Logically, I should have resigned, but I needed the job. Besides, my position was irrelevant. In a forgotten corner of the office, for 2 months, I was invisible until one day Sophia showed up to visit her. Maya was in a meeting, and Sophia started walking around the floor. She noticed me. Leo, is that you? She said loudly. No way. Did you move to New York just to see her? What an obsession. It's not that, I replied. I already worked here. I didn't know she was coming. Just then, the conference room door opened. Maya walked out. As soon as she saw me, she froze. Leo, what are you doing here? Her voice was like a gunshot in the middle of a library. I felt the air compress in my lungs as I stared at her, speechless. Maya Sterling, with her perfectly tailored ivory blazer, black blouse buttoned up to her neck, and her hair pulled back in a high, polished ponytail, stood firm, her lips tight, her brow barely furrowed. She seemed taller than I remembered, or maybe I was the one who had shrunk. I work here, I finally replied, softly. I have for 8 months. She blinked once, twice, as if my presence was an image she was trying to process. Sophia, standing beside her, crossed her arms and let out a sarcastic laugh. Look at the coincidence. Do you think that's normal, Maya, after everything? Sophia, Maya said, without looking at her. I need to speak with him alone. An awkward silence fell over the hallway. Everyone watching us, including my boss, the sales assistants, and even the cleaning lady, pretended not to listen, but their ears were as attentive as mine. We entered a small meeting room. Maya closed the door with a soft click and then leaned against the table, crossing her arms. Her posture was professional, but her gaze was a frozen sea with a hidden storm. What are you doing here, really? I swallowed. I didn't know you were coming. I was hired before your transfer was announced. It's an incredible coincidence, but real. She studied me carefully. Her face was more mature, sharper. The freckles on her nose were still there, but her eyes, olive green, so deep, had something different. There was no automatic sweetness anymore. There was distance, caution. And why didn't you leave? When you saw me, she asked without altering her voice. You could have avoided this. Because I'm not running away anymore. My words surprised me. They were true. I had been running my whole life. Yes, but not this time. Maya lowered her gaze. For a moment she seemed to hesitate, but then she recovered. I'm going to request your transfer. It's not professional for us to be on the same team. We're not on the same team. I work in technical support in a corner of the floor. No one sees me, no one talks to me except Sophia, apparently, I murmured with an ironic smile. She recognized me. I didn't look for her or you. Believe me, Maya, I didn't plan this. A silence fell. Maya moved away from the table and stood in front of the window. The autumn light bathed her figure in a golden tone. She was 29 now, her skin clear and smooth, her cheekbones prominent. She wore tiny gold. Earrings, discreet, like her. Maya was always one for sober elegance, for silent beauty. "Don't look at me as if you're still that little boy in love," she said without turning. "I'm not," she sighed. "Sometimes I think you are. That you're still trapped there in that backyard with that cloth on. Your head and that silly promise to marry me." I didn't know what to answer. "I'm sorry." She turned slowly. Her face was serene, but her eyes showed a spark I couldn't decipher. "It's not enough to apologize, Leo. You caused my world to shatter, and then you disappeared. You left without saying goodbye. I wrote to you many times, and then you left for another city as if I didn't exist, as if you could erase everything like deleting a file." Her voice trembled. For the first time, she didn't seem like the impeccable director, but a wounded woman holding on to her memories. I didn't know how to stay without causing more harm. "Then don't look for me," she said, opening the door. "Don't look at me. Don't talk to me. I don't need any more ghosts in my life." And she left. I was left alone, with the dull hum of the air conditioning and the weight of her words sinking into the chair. It had started badly. Again. The following Monday, the office was no longer the same. My desk was still in its dark corner, next to the maintenance filing cabinet, but I felt the stares even when no one was around. The hallway I walked down every morning to the coffee machine had become a silent parade of faces that turned away when I passed. Some lowered their voices when they saw me. Others simply stopped talking. Sophia had made it her business to make it clear who I was. I knew it when I came out of the bathroom and found a small piece of paper taped to the door. It read, "Please do not. Drug co-workers. Thank you." A smile drawn in black ink decorated the corner. I didn't rip it off. I just looked at it. I left it there and returned to my desk. My boss, Senor Costa, a bald, pot-bellied man who always smelled of menthol cigarettes, called me into his office that afternoon. He was about 50, with a sparse beard and a way of speaking that alternated between sarcasm and resignation. "What's going on with you, Leo?" he asked, squinting behind his glasses. "Since the COO's visit, the whole team has been in gossip mode." "I didn't do anything," I said without raising my voice. "That includes someone saying you and Ms. Sterling have history, because that has already reached the HR department. I'm not going to deny it, but it's personal from the past." Costa sighed. "I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that, but I'll give you a piece of advice. If you want to keep working, here, keep your head down and don't make any more waves." I nodded. That day I ate alone, like every day really, but this time it felt different. It wasn't chosen solitude. It was exile. I didn't even have anywhere to complain. I had caused so much damage in my past life that I couldn't claim anyone's sympathy, and yet it hurt. Later that afternoon, I received a message on the internal system. A new employee would be joining the support area. Her name was Julia Duarte, and I would be in charge of showing her the basic functions of the internal system. The first thing I thought was, 1, more person who will look at me with fear or contempt. But I couldn't refuse the task. Costa had been clear. No waves. I met her the next day. Julia appeared in front of my desk just before 10, carrying a soft-cover notebook and a coffee in her hand. She was young, probably my age or maybe a little younger. Light brown with big dark eyes like strong coffee and messy curls falling over her shoulders. She wore a terracotta-colored sweater, simple jeans, and an air of natural confidence. "Leo, they told me you were going to teach me how not to burn the company down in my first week." I smiled, genuinely surprised. "Only if you promise not to stick passive-aggressive notes in the bathroom." She blinked, then laughed. "So you're the silent psychopath." I expected something more. I don't know, with a black cape and a killer gaze. I felt my stomach clench. I guess rumors fly. "So what if—" "They do?" she said, shrugging. "Rumors don't pay my rent, and you have to teach me how to file tickets in this prehistoric system." I didn't know what to say. After being ignored for so long, that warm indifference disarmed me. During the day, we worked side by side. Julia asked intelligent questions, wrote everything down in tight script, and occasionally made silly jokes about folder names or absurd passwords. And to my surprise, she didn't seem afraid to be near me. "Were you always this quiet?" she asked me while we waited for a report to load. "I used to talk a lot more. Maybe too much." "And what happened?" I paused. "I guess learning to be silent was my punishment. And do you deserve it?" I looked at her, confused. "What? The punishment? Do you deserve it?" I lowered my gaze. "Sometimes I think so. Other times I don't know." She nodded. Without saying more. She didn't press. She didn't offer an opinion. She just went back to the screen and murmured, "This report has more errors than my ex in his adolescence." And we continued. That night, as I was packing up my things, she passed by my desk and left a note scribbled in blue ink. "Thanks for not treating me like I'm stupid. I like you. Jay." I put it in my pocket without opening it until I got home, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled alone. On Wednesday morning, while I was finishing reviewing some reports with Julia, the internal mail notified me of a new ticket. Interdepartmental project. Technical. Support assigned to Leo Silva. It didn't surprise me. What surprised me was the attached note. Project manager Maya Sterling. Julia, who was reading over my shoulder as always, raised an eyebrow. "Is that the Ice Queen?" I didn't answer. I just nodded. Hours later, I received a summons for a planning meeting in the North Room at 2 p.m. with Maya and 2 other people from the strategy area. I arrived punctually. The room had glass walls, elegant, with a minimalist white table and ergonomic chairs. Maya was already there, standing in front of the screen reviewing some slides. She wore a navy blue shirt tucked into beige dress pants, her hair loose, straight, falling over her shoulders with mathematical precision. She didn't even look at me when I entered. I sat at the opposite end of the table. The other 2 arrived minutes later. Rodrigo from the product area and Marta from marketing. Maya started the meeting in a firm, emotionless voice. "We have 3 weeks to implement the new customer tracking system. Leo will be responsible for ensuring compatibility between support and historical data. There is no margin for error or drama." The comment was not casual. I felt it. Like a pin straight to the chest. For an hour, we talked about the schedule, deliverables, and available resources. Maya kept everything professional, precise, and faultless, except that every time she spoke directly to me, her voice lost warmth. It was ice wrapped in education. When the meeting ended, the others left. I started gathering my things, wishing to disappear, but her voice stopped me. "Stay a moment." I froze. She closed her laptop, put it in her briefcase, and sat across from me. She rested her elbows on the table, interlacing her fingers. Her gaze was impossible to read. "I want to make something clear," she said. "This is work, and I am your direct boss on this project. So I ask you not to try to cross the line. Don't try to revive what is already dead." I nodded without looking at her. "I have no intention of doing so." "Are you sure?" "Yes, because you're still looking at me as if you're holding something back." I looked at her fixedly then. "I'm not holding anything back, Maya. I lost everything." She pressed her lips together. "Don't say that as if you're the victim. I'm not. I never was. Then act like someone who understands." The silence grew thick between us. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to explain the sleepless nights, the pain in my chest every time I thought of her, the effort not to cross boundaries, to be better. But it wasn't the time. Not there. "You don't know everything that happened," I murmured. She laughed without humor. "Are you really going to play that card? After disappearing like a coward?" "I wanted to protect you from myself." "And what good did that do?" Her voice broke for the first time. She suddenly stood up, walked to the window, turning her back to me. "You left me alone, Leo. Confused. Humiliated. I destroyed myself inside too, and that's supposed to make me feel better?" I stood up. I couldn't stay seated any longer. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I regret it every day, every hour." Maya turned slowly. Her face was tense, but her eyes shimmered with contained tears. Do you think it was easy for me to forget you? That took my breath away. I spent months hating you, Leo. Years. And the worst thing is that there's still a part of me that doesn't know if I want to see you ruined or hug you until you disappear. The world paused for an instant. I didn't say anything because any word would have been clumsy, small, useless. She sighed, ran her hands through her hair, regaining control like a trained professional. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the technical room. Be punctual. And she left. I sank into the chair, my heart pounding as if I had just run a marathon. Maya hadn't forgiven me, but for the first time, she had stopped seeing me as a monster and had spoken to me as what we were. Two wounded people who never told each other everything they had to say. I arrived at the office before everyone on Thursday. I needed a few minutes of silence, away from the emotional echo that the conversation with Maya still brought. But at 8:01, the sound of soft footsteps and the thud of a cardboard cup holder on my desk jolted me away from the screen. I brought you coffee today, Julia said, setting it in front of me. You look like you dreamed of nuclear wars. I managed a slight smile. Julia sat on the edge of my desk without waiting for permission, as she often did. She wore a dark green long-sleeve dress cinched at the waist, and her curls were pulled back in a side braid that fell over her right shoulder. She was light, always full of contained energy, not nervous, just alive. Thanks, I said, for the coffee and for not treating me like I have the plague. Not the plague, maybe an unresolved emotional fever, she replied with a lopsided smile. I told her I had another meeting with Maya that morning. I didn't tell her everything that happened the day before, but it was enough for her expression to change. And what bothers you more? Seeing her in boss mode or remembering her as someone you can no longer have? That question shook me. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like Maya was just an idea I nourished for too long. An ideal. I don't know if I ever really saw her. Julia nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes we don't love people, Leo. We love the version we invented of them. And that's not love. It's addiction. Her words stayed with me for the rest of the day. After the technical meeting, Maya, a cold and strictly professional conversation, I returned to my desk with my head full of knots. Julia was waiting for me with 2 granola bars and a small note. You survived today. Tomorrow you will conquer the universe. Worse than today is impossible. I couldn't help but laugh. Were you always like this with everyone? I asked her as we sat down in the dining hall at noon. Like what? Warm, unbearably empathetic. Only with people who have hit rock bottom and still come to work with a broken soul. Julia didn't ask me anything I didn't want to tell. She wasn't curious for gossip, but by nature. She wanted to understand without invading. In the middle of lunch, the conversation turned to something lighter. She told me about her family in Medellin, about her father, who owned an old bookstore, and how she learned to love the silence between pages. She told me about an ex who left her because he was afraid she would shine too brightly. And you? She finally asked. What were you doing before hiding in the 1900s? Technical support. I was trying to be somebody, and then I was trying to disappear. She looked at me seriously. You're here now. You're not dead. That's a start. We walked back to work together. In the elevator, there was only silence, a comfortable one. And then something small but distinct happened. When we got to the hallway, Julia touched my arm lightly, a brush of fingers, an unpretentious gesture as if to say, I'm here. She didn't look at me. Like Maya. She wasn't looking for drama, past history, or answers. Julia wasn't Maya, and for the first time, that didn't bother me. The invitation arrived a week later. Annual appreciation dinner, strategy department, mandatory attendance for support staff assigned to key projects. Translation. I had no choice, and my name was there next to Maya Sterling's. The dinner was at a modern restaurant in the uptown Manhattan area. Warm lights, glass everywhere, and an atmosphere where even the silence seemed to have etiquette. I arrived in a dark gray shirt and a navy blue jacket, more elegant than I usually wore. Julia was waiting for me at the entrance in a simple black dress that fell just below her knees and a cream coat over her shoulders. She was beautiful, not in that bright way that attracts crowds, but with a beauty that whispers instead of shouts. If you see me nervous, don't say anything, she murmured, adjusting her purse. I'm here for the free shrimp, and maybe for you. I smiled gratefully. We sat near the center, at a table for 8 people. The seats were not assigned, but as if the universe had a twisted sense of humor, Sophia arrived a few minutes later, accompanying Maya. Sophia didn't look at me. Maya did. And for an instant, that gaze ran over me like an icy needle. Julia noticed the tension. That's her? She asked softly. I nodded. Yes. And the other one, Sophia. She took a sip of white wine. I figured. She has a doomsday face. During the first part of the dinner, I pretended to be normal. I laughed at the right moments. I nodded at every word from the strategy director and spoke the minimum necessary. But I knew Maya was watching me, sometimes out of the corner of her eye, sometimes without disguise. And then the toast happened. A colleague, visibly enthusiastic from the Prosecco, raised her glass and said, "A toast to the support team, especially to Leo, who has been key in this implementation." Everyone applauded, even Maya with a polite smile. But Sophia, no. "Yes, very key," she murmured loud enough for half the table to hear. The murmuring stopped. Maya gave her a look that said, "Don't do it." But Sophia ignored her. "I'm just saying, you have to have a good memory to know who the real heroes are and who just wants to clear their name with Excel and good behavior." I froze. Julia stared at her. "Do you have something to say?" "Sophia?" she asked calmly, but her voice had an edge. "A lot, but I didn't come here to educate anyone," she said, drinking her wine. Julia leaned toward the table. "Then maybe you should be quiet and let the others enjoy themselves. Or would you prefer to read your file too?" Sophia flushed red. "Maya," intervened firmly. "Sophia, enough." The rest of the dinner passed under electric tension. Julia, however, remained calm. She talked to everyone, smiled, and it was clear she wasn't afraid. When we left, Maya approached us at the door. She stopped in front of Julia. "Did you know who he was?" "He knew what he told me, what he wanted to share, and what he showed every day." "And that's enough for you?" Julia held her gaze. "I don't live with ghosts. I live with people. Leo, even with his mistakes, is alive, present. He doesn't hide." Maya didn't answer. She just nodded once slowly and walked away alone towards a taxi. I stood next to Julia, speechless. She looked at me. "I don't want you to compare me to her, but I also don't want you to hide me from her. If I'm going to be near you, Leo, I need to know you are here for me, not for who you were or who you lost." I looked into her dark, honest, immense eyes. "I'm here," I said. And that time, it was true. I had written exactly 34 letters to Maya. None were sent. Some were apologies, others were confessions. Some were pure fury, but they all ended the same way. "Don't worry, I will never force you to love me again." I kept them in a brown envelope that slept at the bottom of a shoebox along with other relics of the previous version of myself. After the corporate dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about what Julia had said about living with ghosts. And although she was talking about Maya, I was also one, a ghost of myself. The following week, after a particularly long technical session, I found Maya alone in the printer room. She was standing with her arms crossed, waiting for some blueprints to print. The mechanical sound filled the silence. I approached slowly, without invading. I took the envelope from my jacket. Pocket. "This is for you." She looked at me sideways. "What is it? A letter from 4 years ago? I never had the courage to give it to you until today." She didn't take it at first. She watched me as if trying to read me from the skin inward. "And why now?" "Because I no longer want to carry things that don't belong to me." That puzzled her. She finally reached out and took the envelope without opening it. "And what do you expect me to do with this? Forgive you, cry, tell you that everything was fine?" I shook my head. "I just want you to read it, and if you decide to tear it up afterward, that's fine." I returned to my desk. The envelope burned in my memory. Every second that passed without a reaction was torture. I didn't know if she would read it, throw it in the trash, or show it to Sophia. But that afternoon, As I was leaving the building, I saw her leaning against one of the lobby columns, alone. She held the open envelope in one hand. "Your handwriting is awful," was the first thing she said. I couldn't help but laugh faintly. "But you wrote it from the heart," she added, looking at me. I read everything, every word. The breeze came through the revolving doors, cold, autumnal. Maya buttoned her coat up to her neck. "In that letter, you weren't the boy who hurt me. You were the boy I knew when we were children." I lowered my gaze. "That boy got lost somewhere, didn't he?" "He just hid very deep inside." We stayed in silence for a while. The city continued to beat. Around us, people coming and going, cars, taxis, noise. But we, in that little concrete bubble, were paused. "Do you know what I thought when you disappeared?" she asked without looking at me. "That you had left to punish me? For not loving you the way you wanted? For choosing Eric?" "It wasn't that. I left because I thought I no longer had a place in your life." She turned her head towards me. "You were wrong. You had a place, perhaps not the one you wanted, but a real one. And when you left, you broke me too. That was also a dagger." Maya sighed. "I wasn't perfect either, Leo. I was confused, unfair, blind, and for a long time I didn't want to admit that part of all this was also my fault. You don't have to carry that. It's not about carrying it, it's about acknowledging it. And if you have changed, I think I have too." I remained silent. There was no easy answer for that. Finally, she took a step toward the street. "Thanks for the letter, I won't tear it up." "And what are you going to do with it?" She smiled slightly. "Maybe I'll keep it to remember that sometimes even mistakes have a name and also need to be said goodbye to." And she left, crossing the street. Between the yellow taxis and the people who didn't know we had just unearthed years of silence, the message arrived on a Friday just before lunch. "I'm in New York for a few days. We need to talk today. Marco's Cafe, 6 p.m. Eric." It took me 10 minutes to decide if I should reply. I didn't, but at 6:00 I entered the cafe. Eric was there, sitting by the window with a cup in his hands. Tall, athletic build, well-groomed beard, the same dark brown hair as always, but now with some gray hairs at the temples. He wore a light gray coat and clean jeans. He looked like he stepped out of a catalog of exemplary older brothers, and yet there was something different, more tired, more human. "Leo," he said when he saw me. I sat across from him without saying a word. The silence was uncomfortable, dense. "You look good," he tried after a few seconds. "You too." Eric looked down, stirring his coffee. "I didn't expect you to come." "Me neither." He studied me for a few seconds. "Maya wrote to me a few days ago. She said you talked to her, that you gave her a letter." I didn't reply. "She also said you were different, calmer." "And what did you come to do, Eric? To judge if I've really changed?" He looked up. His eyes were the same as Dad's, dark, stern, but with an honest depth. "No, I came to tell you something I should have said years ago. I didn't move. I always knew you were in love with her since you were 5, even when you pretended you weren't." My throat tightened. "And you never did anything?" I said. "Yes, I did something worse. I laughed. I turned a blind eye. I liked feeling like the favorite, the one she chose, the one everyone admired. And you were always the weird, intense brother." "I was. Not as much as they said. You were just more transparent, more visceral." Eric sighed. "When Maya and I started dating seriously, I knew it was tearing you apart, but I didn't want to face that truth. I told myself you would get over it." I clenched my fists under the table. "And when everything happened, you only judged me. You treated me like I was a monster, because it suited me to do so. Because it was easier to hate you than to accept that maybe I had failed you too, that we all failed you." I finally looked at him. There was no longer anger on his face, only a weariness I recognized. It was the same I saw in the mirror. "I don't want you to forgive me," Eric said. "But I want to tell you this. I was wrong, about many things. I wasn't the brother you should have had." I swallowed. "And I wasn't the one you needed." For a second, we were both suspended in that mutual acknowledgement. Eric ran a hand over his beard, uncomfortable. And what are you going to do about Maya? I shook my head. I don't know, I don't expect anything. I just want to finish what started well without hurting her anymore. Eric nodded. And with the other girl, Julia? Do you know her? I saw a picture. Maya showed me. He smiled as he did so, I don't know why. I leaned back against the seat. I didn't understand what that meant. Eric stood up and left some bills on the table. Before leaving, he placed a hand on my shoulder. You're not the secondary character, Leo. You just wrote the first act as one. Now it's your turn to choose how the story ends. I watched him leave in the gentle November rain without an umbrella. For the first time, I didn't envy him. For the first time, I felt like we were real brothers. The rain hadn't stopped since dawn. The sky was pale, as if someone had unfocused the entire world. In the office, the atmosphere was just as opaque, and not just because of the weather. That Tuesday afternoon, Sophia appeared on the support floor without warning. She was dressed as always, a white blouse without a single wrinkle, fitted pearl gray pants, and her characteristic tight bun. A woman in her early 30s, olive skin, red lips, and a sharp gaze. When I saw her, my back stiffened. Julia saw her too. She slowly rose from her desk and walked toward her with a calmness that surprised me. Sophia, Julia said without mincing words. You have 1 minute. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Do we know each other? No, but you know Leo. Or you think you know him, and I think it's only fair that we talk. Sophia crossed her arms. I don't have time for moral lessons. I didn't come to give you one. I just want you to know what you're doing. Sophia gave a cold laugh. What I'm doing? Do you mean reminding everyone that not everything is erased with good behavior? Julia took a step closer. No. What you're doing is reducing a person to their worst moment, as if they don't deserve to build anything again. And no, I'm not defending him out of romantic blindness. I know who he was, but I also know who he is now. Sophia lowered her arms, visibly annoyed. I saw what happened. I was there when everything exploded. You weren't. And yet, I'm here now, living what you don't want to see. Do you know how hard it is to look someone in the eyes when everyone tells you to run away? Sophia tightened her lips. I protected Maya when no one else did. And now? Are you still protecting her? Or are you just preventing her from making her own decisions? Sophia didn't answer. Julia sighed. Not everyone changes, I know. But if you don't even give them the chance, then you're not so different from what you condemn. Sophia turned on. Heels and left without responding, but something in her posture, in the rigidity of her shoulders, revealed that her certainties had begun to crack. That night, as I was packing up my things, Julia appeared at my desk. Her eyes were bright. I took a risk. Maybe it won't do any good, but I said it. Thank you, I whispered. She took my hand without words. A simple, real gesture. And for the first time, I knew I wasn't alone. What I didn't know until the next day was what happened afterward. Maya had been in her office all day. Most thought she was catching up on work, but the truth was different. Sophia found her in the executive floor bathroom, leaning against the sink. She was crying silently, her eyes swollen. May, she said, approaching slowly. Maya didn't answer. She just looked at herself in the mirror as if searching for someone who was no longer there. What's wrong? I don't know, Maya replied hoarsely. I don't know when everything became so messy. Sophia offered her a tissue. Leo, yes, but not just him. Me, you, everything. I spent years hating him today, thinking that the only thing he wanted was to destroy me. But now I look at it, and I don't know if I hate him for what he did or for making me feel something I didn't want to feel. Sophia frowned. What do you feel? Maya turned to her, her eyes crystal clear. That maybe it's not such a bad idea to forgive. Not to go back, not to forget, just to breathe again. Sophia lowered her gaze. For the first time, she had no answer. She wrote to me on a Friday afternoon. You can come to the park where we used to take Lucas, your grandmother's dog. 6 p.m., just you and me, Maya. I didn't think too much. I grabbed my coat, closed my laptop, and left the office without saying anything. The park was the same as when we were children. The same peeling wooden benches, the old trees, the smell of damp earth. The fountain in the center still dripped irregularly, as if it had never been completely repaired. She was already there. She wore a wide gray sweater and jeans, no makeup. Her hair was loose, slightly wavy from the humidity. She looked different. Not the COO, not the woman who looked at me with judgment, just Maya. "Hello," she said as soon as she saw me. "Hello." We sat down without touching, one bench apart, the distance just right not to hurt, but not so far as to continue lying. "Thank you for coming," she murmured. "Thank you for inviting me." She fiddled with a ring on her hand, not an engagement one, a simple silver one she used to wear since college. "I've been thinking a lot," she began. "About everything, about you, about me, about what we were, about what we never were. Me too." She looked at me with moist eyes, but no tears. "I want you to know something. I didn't hate you the whole time. There were days when I just missed you, others when I wondered if you missed me too. Yes, every day." Maya smiled sadly. "And yet, here we are. Two adults trying to piece together a story we didn't know how to finish." The wind blew, smelling of dry leaves. A child passed by on a bicycle, laughing as if the world had no weight. "I'm not here to offer you a second chance," she said bluntly. "I can't go back to that place where you were my center and I was just the periphery of your desires." "I know," I said without looking up. "I don't ask for anything, just thank you for saying it." She turned to me for the first time. Her hand touched mine. Not as before, not with desire, just with truth. "Leo, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, not because I forget, but because I want to let go of that pain, because I deserve peace." Tears came to me without warning. I wasn't crying from sadness. I was crying for something I didn't know I still carried inside, something she had just released with a single sentence. "And you should forgive yourself too," she added. "You're not the same. I saw it. You changed. Julia sees it, and that's no small thing." I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. "And you? What are you going to do now?" "I'm requesting a transfer. I was offered the lead for the expansion at the Toronto headquarters. I hadn't considered it until now." "And Eric?" She looked down. "He's no longer in my story. I understood it late, but I understood it." We remained silent for a few more minutes. Then we stood up at the same time, as if our bodies knew the conversation was over. We walked together to the park exit. Before separating, Maya stopped. She looked into my eyes one last time. "We weren't what we dreamed of, Leo, but at least we stopped being nightmares." I nodded, my voice choked. She walked away slowly, her hair moving in the breeze, without looking back, and I knew I was finally free. The following Monday, Maya was no longer in the office. Her transfer to Toronto had become effective with almost surgical speed. There were no public goodbyes, just a brief email note thanking everyone for their joint work. Some replied with emojis. I didn't reply. It wasn't necessary. I sat at my usual desk next to the withered plant I had forgotten to water for weeks and looked at the empty inbox. For the first time, I didn't feel anxiety, only peace. Julia appeared shortly after. She wore a light denim jacket and a sky blue dress. Her smile was the first thing I saw, and for some reason, I felt lighter. "Coffee?" she asked, raising 2 cups, one with moderate guilt and one with decent caffeine. Both sound tempting. We sat in the small break room. It was a quiet day. No one interrupted. Julia tucked her hair behind her ear, distracted. "How do you feel?" "Like I finished a book that had been open for years." She smiled. "And was it a good one?" "No, but I needed to finish it to start another one." She looked at me differently, not with pity, not with fear, but with that warm curiosity she had always had. "And what's the name of this new book?" "I don't know yet, but it's no longer a tragedy." We drank in silence for a few minutes, then she set her cup aside. You know, I always thought people who carry guilt are more dangerous than those who make mistakes without thinking. And what am I? You are someone who no longer hides. I nodded. Julia, I started, not knowing how to continue. I don't want you to be a replacement or a safety net or someone who saves me. Perfect, she said, crossing her arms with a mischievous smile. Because I don't know how to save anyone. I can barely water my plants without killing them. We laughed. But I do want, I said seriously this time. I want to see what happens with you, with us, without rushing, without ghosts. She leaned toward me gently. That seems fair. Although I warn you, I'm demanding about first dates. First date? I thought we were already on the fourth. No, the others were training sessions. This is the real one. Looked at Julia with her messy curls, her unexpected phrases, her hidden scars. She wasn't perfect, but she was present, and that was enough. That week, Costa called me into his office. I have something for you, Leo, he said, pushing a document toward me. They want you to lead the new digital integration team. I read it 3 times before answering. It's a promotion. It's an opportunity, don't screw it up. I nodded and accepted. The night I went out with Julia for the first time, for real, we walked across the Brooklyn Bridge while the wind messed up our hair, and the city shone as if it knew everything was starting over. She took my hand. I squeezed hers without fear. I was no longer the boy playing house, nor the young man confusing love with obsession. I was no longer the younger brother in the shadow of a hero, nor the secondary character. Now, I was finally the protagonist of my story, of my life, of this new chapter that was just beginning.